When you think about ancient guides to leadership and, say, national security, your mind probably jumps to Sun Tzu, maybe Machiavelli. But today, we're going to dive into something completely different. It's called the Humane King Sutra, and it's this unique Buddhist text that makes a pretty wild argument that the ultimate defense isn't a powerful army, but a profoundly wise mind. And look, the entire text, the whole thing, is built around this one single, timeless question. It's something leaders have been wrestling with for thousands of years, and the answer this sutra gives, well, it's just as radical today as it was back then. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with this high-stakes question from a whole group of kings. Then we'll get into the Buddha's really surprising answer. We'll look at the actual path for developing that protective wisdom, see a story of it in action, and then wrap up with what is probably the sutra's most mind-bending instruction for any leader. Okay, so let's set the scene here, because this isn't some quiet philosophical lecture in a monastery. No. The sutra opens with what is basically a crisis summit of the most powerful people in the entire region. Yeah, you heard that right, 16 kings. And they haven't shown up for a casual chat about philosophy. These are leaders with real-world problems. We're talking about the survival of their kingdoms, the safety of their people. Their entire legacies are on the line. And King Prajñā, he just lays it all out there. He speaks for everyone and cuts right to the chase. How do we protect our countries? There's this raw honesty to it, This isn't some abstract problem. It's a desperate plea for a practical, real-world solution. So what does the Buddha say? Does he give them military strategy, economic advice? Nope. His answer is a total game changer. He doesn't talk about building bigger armies or higher walls. He points them toward an internal power, a kind of wisdom he calls Prajñāpāramitā. Now, Prajñāpāramitā isn't just about being smart or clever. It's way deeper than that. It's a profound, transformative insight into how reality actually works. It's the wisdom to see past the surface of things, and according to this text, that very insight acts like a powerful shield. So how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this idea? Well, the sutra uses this concept called the two truths. On one level, the conventional truth, yeah, of course, your country, its borders, your problems, they all seem very real. But on a deeper level, the ultimate truth, everything is interconnected, constantly changing, and doesn't really have a solid, separate existence. It's more like a reflection in a mirror. A leader who gets both levels can navigate the world's problems without getting trapped by them. Okay, so this wisdom is the secret sauce. Great, but how does a leader actually get it? You can't just read about it in a book, right? Well, the sutra lays out a very clear step-by-step path to develop it. It's called the 5 forbearances. And you can almost think of it like a mental and ethical training program for a leader. It's a progressive journey, starting with just committing to the path, then really grasping the ideas, then actually living by them, all the way to this profound, unshakable realization of that ultimate truth we were just talking about. Okay, so I know what you might be thinking. A leader gets all zen and enlightened, so what? How does that actually stop a famine or an enemy invasion? Well, this is where the sutra makes a really bold connection between a ruler's inner state and the nation's outer well-being. And the stakes here are, well, they're as high as they can get. The text claims that a nation led by someone who's cultivating this wisdom can literally avert these 7 types of disasters. We're talking everything from droughts and floods to invasions and disease. The core idea is that an enlightened mind creates a kind of harmony that radiates outward, stabilizing the entire country. And to prove this isn't just some theory, the sutra tells this incredible story. So get this. There's this tyrannical king who's captured 999 other kings. He needs just one more for this gruesome ritual he's planned. And he finally captures his last victim, a king named Puming. So right before he's about to be executed, King Puming doesn't beg for his life. He doesn't plead. Instead, he just calmly recites this verse. He's speaking this profound truth about how fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying power and worldly things really are. And that single moment of wisdom does what no army could ever do. The tyrant king hears these words, and it completely shatters his worldview. He has this sudden, complete change of heart, awakens to the truth himself, and frees everyone. It just goes to show that wisdom isn't passive. It's an active, transformative force that can be more powerful than any weapon.
All of this leads up to the sutra's final and, honestly, maybe its most shocking conclusion about who is really responsible for putting all this into practice.
Right at the end, the Buddha basically flips the script. He says, I'm giving this teaching to you, the kings, not to the monks and nuns. He argues that without the real-world power and influence that leaders have, this wisdom can't actually take root in society and protect people. It's a stunning transfer of responsibility. And that just leaves us with this huge question for our own time, doesn't it? In a world filled with complex global threats, what would it actually look like if our primary defense wasn't just military strength or economic power, but the deep, intentional cultivation of compassionate wisdom in our leaders, in our institutions? It's a radical idea, and it feels just as relevant now as it must have all those centuries ago.